for
Well,
closer.
somebody already started live streaming, so it's. Oh. Zero 981, and you can take it to Twitter 981 FM and tag us in your tweets. Okay, so Versus, what do we have today?
Yeah, the ratings agency Moody's is preparing to downgrade a couple ratings metrics for 9 of Nigeria's banks. And those particular metrics are their long-term deposit ratings and their long-term issuer and senior unsecured debt ratings. So basically, as far as deposits are concerned, the long-term sustainability of those deposits, that's what they're looking at as far as ratings. And then their long-term issuer and senior unsecured debt, that is being able to issue, bonds or IOUs and things like that. And the main reason why they are preparing, that's what they're saying, they're preparing a review which could lead to the downgrade of these banks. In fact, I should mention the 9 banks that they're looking at. Access Bank, Zenith Bank, First Bank, UBA, GTCO, that's Guaranteed Trust Bank, Union Bank of Nigeria, Fidelity, FCMB, and Sterling Bank. And I'll quote from their reports that they put out there. They said Moody's decision to place the long-term ratings of the 9 Nigerian banks on review for downgrade reflects the risk of increasing foreign currency rationing that could compromise the bank's operational ability to meet their foreign currency obligations, which essentially means that the foreign exchange illiquidity that we've seen in the system could actually impact the bank's ability to be able to pay obligations that they have in FX. So like bond payments. In fact, I think I understand that today, Fidelity Bank, for example, they should be making like a $400 million payment on one of their bonds. So that's the rationale behind it. They said as well as the risk arising from a potential material depreciation of the country's foreign exchange rates to the bank's capitalization and asset quality. So from what they said in their reports, about I think it's 40% of the FX exposure that the banks have, 40% of their loan book is in foreign exchange. So if there is a depreciation in the exchange rates, the businesses that they've loaned that they've given those loans to, they earn money in naira. They're paying back their loans in dollars. So that means is that if the rate goes down, your payback becomes more expensive.
Yeah, that much more burdensome for you.
Right. And it's a really tough situation. Plus, you've seen the banks release these statements, whether your debit card, for instance, the spending limit that you have on your debit card is down to like.
Versus, do we have a spending limit anymore?
Yeah, that has completely gone down, and the banks continue to say due to market realities and so on and so forth. So I think these are the things that Moody's is looking at. But again, most these banks, as far as their long-term sustainability, yeah, they're fine. The regulator has made sure that they are, well capitalized, and they can, as far as their operations are concerned, it's just the foreign exchange aspect and it's a reflection of what's been going on in the country.
Yeah.
So that's what that's based on with respect to this review from Moody's.
So Benga already sent in a message saying, what are the implications of the downgrade?
Yeah, so the implications are that if you're trying to raise debts, especially foreign exchange debts in the future, with a ratings downgrade, if it happens, because again, they said that they're preparing a review for a possible downgrade. If it does happen, and that means that if they're going to raise debts in the future, foreign exchange debt, they might be looking at paying more. If you look at the global market and where it is, with the United States Federal Reserve continuously raising interest rates, debt in the international markets is more expensive now. And the rising dollar, in fact, I think Moody's even mentioned the strengthening dollar as well. I want just a little background. If the US central bank continues to raise interest rates, that makes the US securities more attractive, which means funds will go there. So if you, me, and everybody else in this building goes and starts buying US securities because rates are going up, we're demanding more dollars. And if we're demanding more dollars, the price of the dollar is going to go up. So that is also a material risk that they've also mentioned as well. So the answer is debt becomes more expensive. And this was part of the conversation that Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed had last week while she was in DC. I think she's still there, or if she's not back already. In an interview with Bloomberg and a debate she participated in, where the ability of Nigeria to be able to raise funds from overseas because of our big deficits in our budgets and the fact that we need to borrow more money, going to the international markets is not really an option because it's more expensive. So you're looking at more expensive debt if you have to raise that in the future.
Okay, so I love Benga Akamu's message about what happens or what are the implications if that happens, right? But will we see anything just from them considering things happening? Are we going to see any sort of reaction?
Yeah, well, if I'm an investor who has bought bonds, foreign currency bonds in any of these banks, if I get spooked by this alert from Moody's, I might be prompted to sell the bonds in these companies. So when I say sell, if sell, I say, okay, I'm afraid, or I don't want any issues. Let me just sell the bond. And if you sell a bond, the bond, that means the yields go up. So there's an inverse relationship between a bond's price and its yield. If people start selling a bond, the price goes down. And if the price goes down, the yield goes up. And if the yield goes up, that means that it becomes more expensive to pay your obligations on that particular bond. So that's essentially what it is. That is if they see that they might wait for the actual downgrade to happen, or maybe Moody's might change their mind. But essentially, this is just adding to the ongoing conversation on the fact that foreign exchange illiquidity is an issue in Nigeria.
All right, and Gbenga comes back with this one saying, with all this wahala, some people still want to be president. Are the candidates tracking issues like this, and do they have policies to tackle it? Great question.
And the thing is, we should do our best to put them on the spot. I understand that there is a presidential debate on November the 15th. I'm trying to remember who is behind it. I think it's the NESG and another body. Let me take a quick look here if I find this now. It's two particular bodies. I know the NESG is part of it.
NESG, NEDG as
well.
Thank
you. Yes. Yeah. Nigerian Elections Debates Group, NEDG, and the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. So they're facilitating a presidential debate on economic policy that will hold on the 15th of November. And serve as a launch pad to discussions on the roadmap towards an inclusive and prosperous Nigeria. So there you go. Now, who is going to participate in that debate? That's up in the air. They didn't mention any candidates. They just said that it's a debate on economic policy. So, So Benga, there you go. I mean, it's our hope that those two questions will be answered. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they've already had Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi over this past month. The two of them came separately on different days, and they were interrogated on their economic policies for the country. So I think Bola Ahmed Tinubu is supposed to be there on the...
Wasn't it 27th of
October?
Was it?
28th, actually.
28th?
Yeah, so he's due next week, I think, so he's due at the LCCI, and then November they'll have this presidential debate. We'll see who shows up. But, to Benga's point, every single one of these issues has to be addressed by whomever wants to take over as president next year, because they're facing a mountain of issues that they have to address. So we have to make sure they're ready.
All right, Yomi comes in with this message. We've got a couple of messages. Let me start off with Yomi's message. Yomi says, fluctuations in bond prices do not affect how expensive the bond payment would be to the issuer. The expense is on the seller who sold it at a discount and not the issuer. Yeah, but if your bond yields continue to climb, if people continue to sell your bonds, that's an issue. I mean, look at gilts. I can't remember
remember what gilts stand for, but gilts are something that the UK they're similar to bonds. We've seen the turmoil in the markets for the United Kingdom with respect to the gilts, and that's basically UK bonds. They've been selling them since when Liz Truss came out with her budgets, or rather Kwasi Kwarteng, who ended up getting fired, saying that they wanted to cut taxes, but they had no way of trying to fill up the budget hole that they had. So essentially, gilts have been rising. It's the same issue with in Italy, where Italy has had a bit of political turmoil. Even Nigeria, when Zeman Abe came out and said that Nigeria was looking at restructuring debt, our dollar bonds, actually the yields went up because there were a couple of folks that sold. So it's not really a good thing when investors that are holding your debt start to sell it off with respect to any news that they get that spooks them. Yeah.
All right. EIA says, oh, Roses, hold on. The USA is not only getting the inflows because of the rate hike. Another reason is because they have the right institutions. How many companies are under investigation by the US SEC? But here, things are just moving the way they shouldn't. We have to do something. Also says, Yomi is right. However, it becomes a problem for the issuer when you go back to raise fresh funds.
Indeed. It basically becomes more expensive. I mean, if you look at what Nigeria has said, Nigeria is not considering going back to the capital markets to raise debt because it's a more expensive environment. And not only the environment, your own particular ratings and how investors treat your debts also factors in there as well.
And can I just say, I just learned something new because of you wrote this. So gilts.
Yeah. Okay. The gilts. Yeah.
Just government bonds.
Right.
But called gilts because the original certificates issued by the British government had gilded edges.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you excellent.
Yeah, you learn something new every day, yo. Okay, we just got about a minute left.
Yeah. So look, in a minute, again, I understand that Fidelity Bank, from what I've read in business, there is making a $400 million payment on one of their debt obligations. So that's good. And I think with, it ties back to this, how much would it, how much with respect to the banks generally and their health. Our Nigerian banks are healthy. Nigerian banks are well capitalized. This is just looking at the foreign exchange obligations. And again, Moody's has not downgraded them. Moody's is just saying that they are preparing a review for a possible downgrade. So just to summarize, our banks are fine. It's just the foreign exchange issues in this country. It's not just affecting banks, aviation, you name it, stock markets and foreign investors trying to get their money out, so on and so forth.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And we'll end with this message from Otunuga, who says, continuous sell-off of bonds and attendant rise of yields will only affect the issuer when they decide to go back to the market for fresh funds.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
All
indeed.
right, people.
Yes, indeed.
And to everybody who says, who's in with your messages on YouTube, thank you. And that's that for Business Express for today. Coming up, we've got great music for you. Rotus, been a pleasure having you in the studio. Find him. He is online on social media at Rotanquote. Yep. Indeed. And we'll have him back in the studio. Well, we'll have him back on Business Express tomorrow.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Rotus, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's that. Coming up